mentorship. Ladies and gentlemen, now we're moving on to our second keynote speaker. Now, she's an internationally best-selling author, the founder of the world's widest-reaching organizational empathy platform, Empathy Everywhere, and the top 5 rated podcast host of the Mimi Yu Show. She is the best-selling author, CEO, and empathy advocate. She will be speaking about empathetic leadership in the age of change, inspiring the next generation of success. Please join me in welcoming on stage Miss Mimi Nicklin.
Good morning, salam alaikum. You guys are too quiet. Good morning. Thank you. I have been waiting for this conference for about 3 months. So I'm incredibly excited to be able to be here with you today and talk about something that's incredibly close to my heart, which is indeed empathy and how we reconnect our world. Now, some of you will have come here today thinking that perhaps there is no place for empathy in leadership. I am going to take the next 25 minutes or so and do my best possible job to convince you otherwise. And here's why. We have an $8.8 trillion problem. That's a big number, ladies and gentlemen. That number is the loss in productivity due to these 3 things: disengagement, presenteeism, and disconnection. And it is disintegrating our business success. Now, in an industry like yours, you have such huge potential to literally change the world that we live in. You guys power our cities and our countries. You have the power to change this, to include more people, to change the face of work, and to elevate and transform hundreds of thousands of people. But here's the thing. This problem is costing you money. And I know that in this sector, you want to make money. In the UAE alone, you lost $10.3 billion last year. And for those of you from Saudi, it was nearly $25 billion. Those are dollars that you are losing every day because your people are not engaged. You're not capturing their full potential. They don't feel connected with their work. 76% of us, 76% of the world, the global workforce today, is disengaged. And 55% of employees globally say they're going to resign this year. That means theoretically half of the room. We can't have half of our people walk out because they're no longer engaged. The last 4 years changed everything. But don't believe that the next 4 aren't going to change it all again. 40% of the American corporate workforce have already left. 40% of people working every day, earning the growth that you guys all need, have already left. And worse than that, on a human level, let's move beyond work just for a moment. On a human level, 52% of us, over 3 billion people, are lonely. Now, when you understand that as human beings, we are meant to be together. We are a pro-social species. We don't do well alone. Loneliness is not the absence of people. We're constantly surrounded by people. Loneliness is the absence of connection. And when you are chronically lonely, half of the world statistically, it is as dangerous to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The chronically lonely, the chronically disconnected will die 8 years earlier. Our loneliness in work and beyond is killing us. We have to turn it around, ladies and gentlemen, and that's why I get up every day to do this work. To try and convince all of you, all of the HR leaders and senior leaders out there, that we have to fill the gaps. And you were hearing just now from Mariam how well so many businesses in this region are already doing that. Why? Why do we have half a lonely world out there? Because of something called the empathy deficit. The empathy deficit was coined by Barack Obama in 2006. He stood up and he addressed his audience and he said, "I know we should be talking about our federal deficit, but I think we should be talking about our empathy deficit." And then us humans, being humans, have done very little about that for nearly 20 years. And those gaps between us, that lack of understanding, whether it's culture, background, religion, race, choice, personal lifestyle, those gaps have been growing ever since. So let's look at the impact on our world, the world that we all work in, because of course, the world of work can only exist in the wider world that we all live in as people. The loneliness endemic that I mentioned has been coined by the WHO as a global health concern. The Surgeon General of the USA has stood up and explained that it is the highest burden to our healthcare costs worldwide. Our loneliness is pulling apart not only our people, but our governments and our spend. In countries like the UK, they are predicted to have 2.5 million lonely older people by 2027. The National Health Service of the UK cannot carry that loneliness. They can't afford for that many people to be lonely. Islamophobia is up 250%. A huge amount of my work is in trying to connect our world. When you consider that there are 1.9 billion Muslims in the world, how is it possible that we are letting a 250% increase against 24% of our planet? This is not just a problem for the Arab and Muslim world. It's a problem for the whole world, and I could go on, but I won't. Beyond that, in 2018, when I started this work, I was researching, and there was one piece of data that I'll never forget. And it was that the second biggest killer of our children aged 16 to 22, is suicide. When our children are killing themselves, rather than staying on the same planet and becoming graduates in all of your businesses, we have a problem on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. And to make matters worse, this year, for the first time in history, we will see 40 national elections. That is representative of 43% of global GDP. Now, if you think of your own country, just for a minute, and an election in your own country, and the type of controversy that might cause, look at the Americans. Every time that there is an election, the entire country is pulled apart between Democrats and Republicans. Now times that by 40. We have a complex world, and it's going to continue to be that way. When I started this work just 5 years ago, no one was inviting me to conferences to speak about empathy in the workplace. But today that has changed. It is now an organizational and political discussion all over the world. If you Google empathy and anything you are passionate in, your sector, your role, children, education, healthcare, technology, you will find pages and pages of Google results. This will never be a soft issue, and this will never be a soft skill. We are not talking about soft skills. We're talking about hard skills that are hard to find, hard to maintain, and hard to keep consistent, but they will have a hard impact on your businesses, your performance, and your growth. We have the chance to change the world, and not only our businesses. But how big is this problem? How big is this empathy gap between us? Well, it's quite big. It's been going for 30 years, so there are research statistics out there to show that in the last 3 decades, this evolutionary skill set, this skill set, not an emotion, this skill set that connects the human race and allows us to survive. We are not talking about thriving. We are talking about surviving. And yet, it has declined by 48%. 50% of a skill set that makes us human has disappeared. How is that possible? How are we watching it go by? We are in what people call the fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution is generally about business and tech. It's why I can come to the Ritz-Carlton on a Monday morning in Dubai in a Kareem. It's why Airbnb is one of the biggest hospitality brands in the world and it doesn't own a single property. It's why Alibaba Group is the largest retailer without a single store. That's what the fourth revolution has been about. But it's not only that. It's about our people. It's about society and social connection. And it's changing who and how we lead. And I am absolutely sure that in the next 3 days, you are going to talk about Gen Z. You are going to talk about how you lead multi-generational teams and how different the top of the organization and the bottom is today. Empathy is your data set. It is the ability to understand the changes in who you're leading and how they want to be led. It was Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, who has returned $1 trillion to his shareholders, that said, most people think empathy is something reserved for their family and friends. They are wrong. It is an existential business priority. Understanding your teams, your clients, and yes, your stakeholders, your board of directors, relies on empathy. It is the ability to understand them. It is the ability to balance humanism, people, and capitalism. You all need to make money, lots of it. I'm not ever going to suggest you shouldn't, but this is about people beyond profit, not instead of. And often in HR, in people development, it comes with a cost. But I'm going to tell you on this stage right now that so much of this shift costs nothing. It's about listening. It's about being human. It's about understanding the people around you. This is organizational empathy. And ladies and gentlemen, it will future-proof your business because those Gen Zs and indeed everybody else need you to do this. They will demand of you to do this. If you do not listen, if you do not connect, if you do not understand their realities, they will vote with their feet. So what is it? I've been up here for at least 10 minutes. You will all have an idea of what empathy is, and all of those will be right. There's no wrong definition. But fundamentally, what we're talking about here is perspective taking.
Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray? Do you ever actually leave the studio? Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy.
That's taken from the Joker movie, one of the most successful movie launches of all time, revenue of over $1 billion. What does he say? Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy. That's what empathy is. Empathy is the ability to perspective take, to understand why is your top performer no longer performing? Why is that group of people always late? Why are redundancies up? Why Has your most loyal customer changed his mind? It's understanding, why are they behaving the way they are? What do they see that perhaps I haven't seen in the same environment? It's the ability to recognize and respond to that reality, and you will find it in the FBI, you will find it in the US Army, you will find it in the most tough-edged environments possible. Again, this is not a soft skill, this is a hard skill. It's a hard skill to really understand your people. It will help you balance your people with your growth, to make sure that you are doing that in unison to your full potential. It will help you drive collective progress. Progress for you at the top and them at the bottom and everybody in between. It is the only way to create sustained well-being and inclusion. How can you have an inclusion agenda if you don't ask people how they want to be included? So when HR teams talk to me about this, the first thing I always ask is, well, have you asked them? And often, they say no. We have to listen to our people if we want to include them. To be well, to be healthy, to have a fully functioning immune system, you need to be seen and heard. It is fundamental to who we are as human beings. Two babies who are born equally sick, the one that is given empathy will outlive the other one. So I say this is about survival. You can't create a well-being agenda at work if people don't feel that you're listening to them. All of the health and yoga classes and brilliant health insurance is important, but it's entry level. To really make sure that your well-being agenda is fully functioning, you have to impact the human beyond the physiological reality that they're living in. The good news is that we're not born with a fixed amount of this. Probably the question that I get asked most is, but Mimi, maybe you just have more empathy than everybody else. I promise you I don't. You are all born with it. It is built into your prefrontal cortex in your brain. This is an evolutionary skill set. Because we knew as we evolved, we can't do it alone. You can't build a table on your own, let alone a multi-million-dollar energy business. We just can't survive alone. So because of that, it is hardwired into your brain at birth. Your brain gives you this ability to understand others. So you can't have any more or any less. You can just practice it. You can choose to use it. And because of that, you can train it. That's what I do, right? You can train it. You can inspire it. You can encourage your people to listen to each other. You can teach your leaders to be able to understand the people that they lead and shift the effectiveness of that leadership. I promise you that any program, any system, any training schedule that you have in place, if people feel they belong, if people feel connected to it, they do better. And also, they remember it for longer. That's also due to neuroscience. Beyond that, 76% of people say that their motivation is higher, and get this, they'll work longer hours out of choice when empathy is in place. They want to work more for you. Okay, they're going to work longer hours, not because you ask them or because their KPI is to do so, but because they want to be at work. They want to work for you. 76%. 63% say that their engagement goes up. They're interested in your new policy, in the emails coming from HR. They're interested in the corporate goals and where you're going. They want to come to the town hall. 48% say they're more innovative. We're going to talk about that in our panel just now. And this is also because of neuroscience. When you feel you belong, you feel people are listening, they're interested in you, your brain functions in full potential. There is no self-censorship. Self-censorship is the enemy of innovation, right? Because to innovate, you have to take risks. You have to be creative. You have to be strategic. And if you're censoring everything you say because you're worried no one's going to listen, you instinctively cut that off. So you're driving motivation, you're driving how people perform, you're driving their innovation. And this is my favorite statistic of all time. Just under 80% of people have said, and this is a big study, 6,000 people across the world, 79% said they will leave their job, their career, and everything they've ever done to find a more empathic boss. I believe that's what led to the Great Resignation. Okay, people will vote with their feet. If you don't hear them, they'll find someone else who will. With 65% of us saying that our stress is higher now than ever before, and as I said earlier, 55% of us saying we want to resign. This is a significant financial liability. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is not optional. In order to drive your business, to drive your profit, to drive your output per capita by 37%, by the way, you have to listen to your people. You have to create belonging and engagement. And there are 10 more reasons. Anybody who wants these slides, you can find me literally anywhere on social media, and I will give them to you. High fear comes from low empathy. Low productivity, low insight, less innovation, low morale, higher absenteeism, higher sick days as well, by the way. It's endless. When your culture is more inclusive, there is more belonging in the workplace, every business indicator improves. The great thing about human beings is that we want to win. We want to perform. I know it's hard for you to read that, but the red letters here, what they say is that 93% of employees will say, yes, I want an empathetic leadership team, but I also want high performance. What happens if you take a child to a birthday party and they lose the game or they lose the race? They cry, right? We want to win. All of us want to win. So yes, we want our bosses to listen to us. Yes, we want to have a voice. But we don't want to do that in a void of performing. We want it to help us perform. 93% of us. So this is about performance, and fundamentally, this is the question. How long can you afford to ignore it? If it's that simple to start listening and start understanding and growing your profits and your output, let's all do it today. Because there's no human that doesn't have the need to be understood, and therefore there's no team that won't do better when that need is fulfilled. And that is why all over the media you will see this, that empathy is the most important leadership skill of 2024. You can train technical skills. You can train elevation of talent. You can also train empathy. As I mentioned earlier, for the first time in history, in fact, we have these multi-generational workforces that in much of the world, I actually live in Malaysia, in much of Asia particularly, we have 4 generations in one workplace. You might have the chairperson still in the business at maybe 85 or even 90 years old. And then people coming in at the bottom, perhaps at 17. 17-year-olds and 70-year-olds have very little in common. They're not speaking the same language, let alone tweeting the same language, okay? So we have these diverse, multi-generational workplaces that we need to communicate within. And whether you're looking to recruit them at the beginning, how you recruit, how you advertise, what job titles they want. Or at the other end, you're looking at how do we retire people? How do people want to end their careers today? Empathy is your ability to understand them and improve that at both ends. So this is my question to you. How can you motivate or inspire anyone if you don't first understand them? And how can you lead if you don't first listen? I want to make sure that I give you a little bit of the science before I close, because this is fundamentally based on neuroscience. We have something built into our brains called the fight or flight response. It's what enabled us to escape saber-toothed tigers when we were evolving back in the beginning of dawn. What it means is that when we perceive threat, of one of which is that we don't belong, that nobody cares about us, that we don't fit in, it impacts the stress hormones in our body, releases adrenaline and cortisol into your system. When that happens, the brain cannot function in full. If you've ever had an argument with somebody at work or at home, and you've said something you didn't mean, and later on you think to yourself, why did I say that? Because your brain wasn't fully functioning. You literally couldn't control the thinking part of your brain. So this listening is based on neuroscience. It's based on how our brain works in terms of performance. The listening-led leader doesn't try to evaluate or solve problems in the moment, but listen to what the person's saying to gain mutual understanding. I love this quote from Sam Palmisano. He used to be the CEO of IBM. He was in Japan a long time, and when someone asked him, Sam, why was Japan so important to your leadership journey? This is what he said. Because I learned to listen in having only one objective, comprehension. I wasn't listening to critique or convince. I was listening to understand. Now here's the thing about listening versus hearing. You are all hearing me right now. You can hear my voice. But perhaps some of you are reading your emails or thinking about what's at home or wondering if you'd reorganize something in your agenda. You're not listening, but you're hearing. This noise, which is very annoying and very loud, I'm going to turn it off, is the noise of an aeroplane. But you hear how loud that is. That's how loud it is when you're in a plane. But when you flew here today, for those of you that flew, you didn't hear that sound for like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, okay? Your body will adapt to it. That's hearing. It's a natural response to sound. Listening is active. Listening is to decode information, not just hear it, but actually understand what people mean by it. So ask yourself this today as you sit through this conference and you meet people at lunch, are you listening to reply or are you listening to understand? Again, back to Gen Z. Gen Z state that open communication, talking to you as leaders, drives performance by 3.5%, and yet over 30% of them don't think there's any transparency. They don't think you're listening. They think that you know better. And maybe you do. But the minute they feel that, performance drops. When I've asked them all around the world, how do you perform? How does it make you feel at work when your leaders listen to you? This is what they say. I feel motivated, loyal, valued, committed, respected, trusted. Who doesn't want your team to feel those things? This is not because you gave them a training program or sent them on an MBA or anything else. All of these improvements are because you heard them. That's all they're asking of you. The challenge is that our brains constantly evolve, right? We get smarter as evolution grows. So your brain wants to keep you in auto drive so that you can solve problems quicker and answer questions quicker, be smarter and more effective. But here's the thing, you have to override it. Because to listen, you have to slow down. You have to actually listen to people. You have to tell your brain to stop the autopilot and start hearing the person in front of you. So it has to be active, ladies and gentlemen. You can't just pretend to listen. You have to really, really do it. I want to end with 4 tips so that I give you something to take away in terms of how you can do this. The first is to use your curiosity. Just ask questions. Ask them, what do you think? Help me understand how you got here. How did you come to this conclusion? The reality is we often know the answer as leaders because we've seen it all before, but that's not the point. They need to feel that you are interested in how they got there and how they came to that conclusion. So the first thing is just to ask questions. Curiosity is the backbone to empathy. The second is to use how more often than why. When we use the word why is it late? Why did we delay? Why didn't the supplier come through? Why is the contract being cancelled? It's very offensive language on the attack. If you shift those sentences to how is it that we're late? How did the client come to close the contract? How did we underperform significantly for 3 months? The question totally changes. Back to neuroscience, the brain goes into calm, and people can answer with insight rather than panic. Use how more often than why. What is stopping you? This is my favorite question. It also comes from neurolinguistics. When somebody says they can't do something, or they don't know how to do something, ask them this. Ask them, what's stopping you? You will see their eyes move slightly up or slightly down as they access their subconscious, and you will find infinite behavioral change. And the last one is to master presence. Listen more than you speak, even if you've heard it all before. Still listen. Empathy leads to relationships. Better relationships leads to engagement, performance, and growth. These are not optional. They are human. The last thought I want to leave you with is this. Beyond everything I've said, beyond engagement and growth and results from your most recent survey, I want us to remember this. As humans, as leaders, as people, we are all more alike than we are different. And I want to play you one clip before I finish. What movie is that? God, you can talk louder than that. James Bond, exactly. Who doesn't want to start Monday with James Bond? But that's not why I played it. Why I played it is to make the point. The one thing that makes you notice is that since 1962, they have been making the same movie, and we continue to pay for it. Okay? Over and over again. It's the greatest marketing con in history. But beyond that, it tells me that whether you are 70 or 17, we all want the same things. We all want to be loved. We all want to be the hero. We all want some action and drama in our lives. We are human. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an $8.8 trillion problem. How much of it will you reverse? Are you listening? Will you listen? Thank you very much for listening. Does anyone have any questions? I'm about 3 minutes over, but I'm happy to if the organizers are. There's a gentleman in the middle. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Thanks for the interesting topic and the statistics. My question is, what kind of common challenges leaders face while incorporating empathy and how can be overcome? The second question, already you have answered that, how me as a leader to cultivate empathy. I've seen the 4 steps. I hope inshallah it will be useful for me. But maybe you can answer the first question, please.
Absolutely, thank you for the question. I'll tell you in the shortest way possible, given our time. Empathy has 2 great enemies. One is high stress, and the other is low time. Okay, which leader in this room does not have high stress and low time, right? We live in that state. So I would say the biggest challenge is in finding the space to listen. As I said, you can't just pretend. You have to actually listen. And that really involves us slowing down. And in this fast-paced world, everything's about speeding up. So I think the first challenge is slowing down enough to hear people. And the second is patience. Because as I touched on, often what we hear from our teams, we have heard it before, and you know the answer. You know the solve to the problem. But it's not about the solve. It's about hearing them so they can come to the solve. So I think the two biggest challenges are time and stress, and therefore becoming present. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much. Anybody else before I give the stage to our wonderful panel? No, James Bond has put you all into silence. Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll be back just now.
Thank you very much, Mimi, for this eye-opening session and this wonderful journey you took us in, and I'm sure we all miss it. No?
Yeah,
Thank you. Well, thank you once again. It was indeed an eye-opening session. Now, ladies and gentlemen, next is our panel discussion that we've all been waiting for. As Mimi said, we will be discussing innovation. So it is empowering tomorrow's energy leaders, cultivating a culture of innovation and excellence. Please join me in welcoming once again our moderator for this session, who is going to introduce our speakers, Ms. Mimi Nicklin.
I'm back. Did you miss me? Okay, from empathy to innovation. This has been also an absolute highlight planning for this panel and meeting my fellow panelists. So we have 4 people who are going to come join me on the stage and talk about innovation and excellence and leadership. How do we lead innovation and excellence? So I need my hands here. My first panelist, I'm not sure if you're all ready to come on up, but the first panelist that's going to join us up here is Dr. Abdelbasit Ayoub, who's the lead HR and business partner and leadership trainer from Saudi Aramco. Hello, Abdelbasit, welcome. Second, I've got Amit Thakkar, who's come all the way from the UK. He is the Vice President of Leadership and Culture at BP. Amit, welcome. I'm also going to be joined by Hind Al-Shamri, help yourself, Head of Aramco Business School, also here from KSA, and Ali Ibrahim Abul Halika. He's my last, there you are, Ali, hello, who is a seasoned and experienced leader in HR Capital, currently heading human capital and corporate services in global energy companies. Welcome! Hello, everybody, welcome to the stage. I am very excited to have you up here because it takes less pressure on me. I can stop talking for a while. So let's, oh, there we go. We've got a little bit of sound going on here. Can you guys hear okay? Yeah? Okay. So, as we've discussed when we met earlier this week, we're going to try and have a conversation here so that we can really engage the audience and pull them in to get as much as they can from you all in the next hour, looking at innovation, at excellence, and how we lead that conversation. So let's start by just looking at innovation and the definition of innovation. Ali, why don't we start with you, because you were last up here, so you're on the spot. Tell us, in your mind, what does innovation mean to HR in energy today?
First of all, thank you for having me today. That's a pleasure of mine to be sitting in front of all of you, and it was an exciting session that you have provided. Innovation. Honestly speaking, as we speak at this stage, innovation developed. So in the last 5 years, and even before, if you ask anyone every year, innovation will be a different concept. Innovation to us as a human capital is what we actually provide to the organization in difference. And in my opinion, people last year, for example, it was technology purely, it was developing processes, it was digitalization, and so on and so forth. Innovation today is how you can capture the eyes of the employees, how you can actually create that value of leadership within the organization from the skill sets that you provide. Today I have seen a lot of information around, for example, empathy, the way that you have described it, just listening, the style of listening, information from that stage, that's part of innovation. And how you develop that stage and give people that freedom to to understand that you as a leader in an organization are willing to open your doors, for example, and create that culture.
Thank you. Hind, do you agree? Do you define that in the same way when it comes to innovation?
Yes, before I start, I would like to welcome our audience, my fellow panelists, and yourself. Thank you for having us today. And just to build on what you shared with us and my colleague here, Ali, I think innovation is part of our daily, embedded in our daily activities. And it's the ability, I believe, to create something that will add value. So, or taking something to take it to the next level, be it at the personal level or in business. And being in HR, I think we are trying to promote this in our culture, in organizations, hiring the best talents, innovative people, you know, and promote that process within. So yes, I do agree.
Thank you. Amit, from the UK point of view, what does this mean for you in your career, working with people, leading with people, driving people to be the best they can be? How has that shifted? How has that shifted in recent years?
Firstly, thanks for the invite. It's great to be here in the UAE. I think the last 4 years have been an incredibly challenging and difficult time, and actually they've disrupted patterns that we've had for a long, long time, from my perspective. I think if you look at the rhythm that we had before the pandemic, especially in the UK and Europe, I'm not sure exactly how the pandemic hit the UAE, but everything has changed. I think the rules have changed. I think the ways of working have changed. I think the expectations from both employers and employees has changed, especially from a well-being perspective. I think what happened there really rewrote the expectations. There's probably two things that come to mind around this element. I do think we're living in a little bit of innovation debt at this moment. I think the ways of working that we've had since 2020 have put in place, I think, challenges for employees around back-to-back calls. If it's similar to my diary, spend a lot of time on Teams. There's not much time for reflection in between. There's not much time for accidental conversation. There's not as much time for brainstorming. And I think what we need to foster in this next phase is how do we enable some more of that human connection, some of the things that you were talking about, but also some more of the space. If you look at companies like Google, they actually fostered environments, physical environments, where accidental connections come through from different disciplines coming together. And I think that's one of the things that I'm noticing at the moment that we need to bring back further. We've got into a very strong performance delivery mindset. I think the innovation mindset is one that's probably going to need some more attention.
So Abdulbasit, how do we do that? Do we need innovation departments, innovation agendas, or are we all just supposed to be innovative in between team schools? How does that work from your point of view?
Just I want to mention one thing very, very important. As all of you know, Kodak. Where is Kodak? Do you remember, guys, the old cameras, the plastic cameras, the plastic film? Where is Kodak? Why Kodak does not exist? Okay, and Kodak now disappeared because lack of innovation. So my big message to all of us is innovate or die, as simple as this. Innovate or die. So organizations is the same. So if organizations do not innovate, subsequently, they completely disappear.
So I feel like we've got quite a lot of drama up here, because Amit just said everything has changed, and
Yes.
Abdullah, you've just said that innovate or die.
Yeah.
So this is quite a big demand on the audience this morning. Let's look at leadership. So we know we have to do it, right? We have to innovate, we have to shift in our people, in our performance. But Amit, how, right? How do energy leaders need to shift, transform, consider their roles to achieve on, these changes that you've mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question at this moment. And as one of our speakers said this morning, I think our industry is one of the most important in the world. Everything we do fuels, literally, the world to exist as it is and to deal with both the challenges that we have now, but also, as we know from the ongoing sustainability challenges we're all dealing with, there's a need to consider the next generation as well. We have, in BP, thought about this through multiple angles. So there's two primary things that we've been doing in the last few years. One is investing in leadership, one is investing in teams. The leadership program that we've put in place is called Reinventing Leadership. We had a big restructure in 2020. We reset our purpose to reimagine energy. And obviously with a big ambition like that, we need to make sure the leadership skills were in the right place. So we've put in place a program of interventions, starting with the exec level, moving all the way down through the teams. And by the end of this year, we will have taken 10,000 people through leadership development training in 35 locations in 6 different languages. I'm not recommending you all implement that as a program activity. That's been a lot of hard work. But what it has done is it's allowed us to engage our leadership population in a conversation. And I think that's the first thing. You can't tell people to be innovative. You can't tell people just work harder. It has to be a two-way dialogue. It has to be one where, to your presentation, we're listening more to the employees, but also we're providing the context about the business challenges. There's something about transparency. So I think the investment in leadership is really critical. 3 things that we focused on. One is psychological safety. I think if you want people to innovate, if you want people to be excellent, if you want people to bring their ideas, they need to feel psychologically safe. It's actually been one of the biggest areas we've focused on for the last 3 or 4 years. Comes back to what you said around the neuroscience aspect. People's flight or fight response is triggered very, very clearly, and 5 times more than a positive emotion, if you look at the neuroscience research. But because of that, when we send our employee communications out, sometimes, you know, the tone has to be really careful. We also want people to bring their ideas. So if they feel that their ideas are not going to be listened to or talked through, psychological safety is critical. I think it's an ongoing muscle that needs to be built. And actually, to your last point, I think most of our execs have too much pressure on them. Time is light. The world has become more complex. So we're trying to help people build psychological safety. The second one is around how do you drive performance and care for people at the same time. It's not either or, it's both. And understanding how they can manage both the pace and the intensity of work is something that we're really focused on.
It's endless, right? I mean, it is an endless balance. Hind, I know you have so many opinions on this, on the transformational leadership skills that leaders need. Building on what Amit was just saying there around the role of communication, the role of engagement, transparency. Tell us your experience and your thoughts in that area.
Sure. First of all, I agree with my colleague Amit, and to build on that, just zooming inside our organization culture to start with, and I think leaders, they have huge impact on the organization when it comes to promoting innovation culture and open communication. It all starts by adopting that mindset of positive leader with an open mind to hear what his team they have to say, and pause to listen and reflect and encourage that communication and engagement. Also collaboration, cross-functional collaboration and